In last week's video, we looked at creating a UKG rhythm section. This week on Inspired By, we're going to be looking at the famous bass lines and melodic sections that shape the genre. Welcome to Inspired By, a series where we look at the musical trends, past and present, in order to understand the techniques used so that you guys can make better music. My name's Will if you don't know me, and I make music under Hushchild. If you saw last week's video but you're not yet a subscriber, consider hitting that button. While you're there, hit the bell icon and you'll get notified when I upload my next video. If you didn't see our last video, then hop over there, get caught up with the rhythm section, and then jolly back. Now, if you're not familiar with UK Garage, the sounds that we're gonna make are actually iconic. They're heard time and time again, from Wiley's What Do You Call It to Dizzy Rascal's new album, and frequently throughout AJ Tracey's discography. So you need to know it if you're interested in creating UK Garage music. Now, you might already know that if you are a member of my Patreon, you'll be able to download the entire project that we're creating today, which includes the bass line, melody, and the drum section that we created last week. That means you can get up close and personal with the project and create your own arrangements much easier. For now, let's jump into it. What we're going to do is create a kind of organ bulb bass that we hear in Garage a lot, and we're going to create that iconic, what I call the Nintendo sound, because I have no idea what it's called. Let's jump into it. What I want to start with is the Nintendo Plucks sound, okay? This is reminiscent of everything from the old Esky Boy tracks to Skepta's tunes, and you can even hear it on Dizzy Rascal's new album on the track You Don't Know. So how do we go about making this sound? Well, I'm going to use Serum, and I'm going to use kilo hertz pitch shift just because it's easy. However, don't be deterred. If you're a Logic user, then you can obviously use just the standard pitch shift function. Ableton user without kilohertz, you can of course download any pitch shift plugins from Maxim SP, and there's loads out there for free. Or if you want to do it a little bit of a longer route, you can of course make these shapes from the operator and then just pitch them 7 steps and 12 steps ahead and stagger them. It won't cost you that much time. Do stick around, because at the end I'm also going to show you how to make that iconic sub bass, or I believe it's also known as the bulb bass. So I'm going to bring in Serum. So the first thing that I'm going to do is just go down to analog on oscillator A, and I'm going to choose basic mini. And I'm going to set this to the 3rd wavetable position. I'm also going to set my octave in the sub to -1 and direct out. On envelope 1, I'm going to bring the sustain all the way down, and I'm going to decrease my decay a little bit as well. I'm also going to go over to my filter, make sure it's set to MG low. So we've got this low pass effect, and I'm going to bring envelope 1 over to the cutoff and make sure that it's ducking down. And I think that's fine for now. We might change it later. And finally, I'm going to add a little bit of direct out noise, and I'm going to bring that level down a little bit as well. I'm going to add a tiny bit of tube distortion to about 65% with the drive, and a little bit of plate reverb. I'm going to take the low cut out and bring the size down to about 30% and the damp down to about 20%. And my mix down to about 15-16%. It is entirely, of course, up to you. So I mentioned that I'm going to do this with kilohertz pitch shift. Obviously, if you don't have this, then what you can do is you can record the sound in. And then you can bounce this in place by right-clicking, going to freeze track, flatten the track, and then you can pitch shift these 2 parts by +7 semitones and then +12 semitones. And then I would just go over to the right hand side, and then with your +7 semitones, maybe adjust it by a few milliseconds, and the 12 semitones a few more milliseconds above that. Okay, I'm going to do it a slightly quicker way, I believe, with kilohertz pitch shift. All right, so I'm going to type in pitch, and we've got this pitch shifter here. If you've got this, then obviously, yeah, set it to +7 first. Grain size is all the way up and compensation is low. And with mix, we're going to bring it down to about 30%. We can copy that over, and this second one here, going to set it to 12. Bring my mix down just a tiny bit more. Everything else can stay the same. Now it sounds like this. So I do apologize again. I don't know the technical name of this instrument. If you do, please leave it in the comments below because I'd be genuinely interested. I call it the Nintendo Pluck sound. It's what it is. We're not quite out of the woods yet. So what I'm going to do is just add some Valhalla reverb. You can of course use the standard hall reverb in Ableton or Logic's reverb if you're using that, FL the same. I'm going to bring the decay down to about 1.5 and the mix down to 20%, the pre-delay to 15. I'm going to take the bass multiplier off and I'm going to take the low cut up to about 500-ish and bring the high cut down. I actually really like that. So I'm going to add some OTT. If you're using Ableton, you can go to multiband dynamics and then choose the OTT preset. If you don't have OTT, you're using Logic or FL, Xfer makes this free OTT plugin that you can download. I'm going to take the low all the way out and bring the percentages down for downward and upward. And I'm just going to bring the high and medium down about halfway to where they're already at, okay? And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the Valhalla reverb and I'm going to put it on send A. And then this is going to be drenched in reverb. And then what we're going to do is sidechain that so it doesn't play when the kick plays, okay? So let's just get a nice kind of reverb sound. Probably going to end up EQing this as well. I'm just going to take out the highs. Something like that. And again, take out any of those low kind of muddy notes. Something like that is great. So if we play those two together. Cool. Like I said, I'm going to add a compressor on that first send and it's going to be tied to the kick drum. And then what this does is just ducks it when the kick drum plays so we don't have loads of reverb. It's going to be quite harsh, turn my attack down and my release is going to be up so it comes back slowly. It's going to play G, G and then I'm going to move down the keyboard and play D sharp and D. Okay, so here we go. And we're all good there. I'm just going to quantize that and make sure that it's nice and in time. I'm happy with that. Sweet. So I've got that classic dubstep garage drill sound that we hear time and time again in UK music. The next thing I want to do is create more of a sub bass pattern. So I'm going to use 2 instances of Serum. You guys at home, if you don't have Serum, you can use the operator. So I'm going to set Serum to basic shapes and just the sine wave. I'm going to turn my sub on to direct out and set it to the triangle wave -1 octave. I'm going to bring that level down ever so slightly. There we go. And my attack is up slightly, just so I have some control for when the kick drum plays. It has that naturally sidechain kind of sound. We don't want to be sidechaining absolutely everything. And I can leave that there. I am going to play in my melody, which is just, again, going to follow that rule of G, D sharp, D. And then I'm going to go up to the higher G as well. So here we go. There you go. So there's my pattern. And I'm just going to Shift Command U to look at my settings, quantize to 16th notes. So I still have those offbeat melodies. I'm going to copy that down. And the reason for this is that I'm going to make that organ bulb bass sound. Now you can do all of this in 1 instance of Serum. I like to do it in 2 just so I have a little bit more control. And there's actually a preset for this. If you go to your standard bass presets and you go down to organ bass, you have this instrument here. I'm just going to turn that sub off. And we're going to go over to effects and we're going to add a little bit of tube distortion again, set it to pre and bring this up and turn on hyperdimension and bring that detune all the way down. Probably bring the mix down about 40%. And let's listen to this. So not bad, but we're going to bring this up 1 octave. So it's all a little bit too loud at the moment. So we're going to bring these levels down and that's where that bit of control comes in. And of course, we're going to EQ these as well. So let's look at my first bass. And let's bring in my organ bass, but I'm going to bring it up from the floor, and then that way I can kind of control how much I'm bringing in. If you start from the loudest setting, in my experience, you tend to have something that sounds a little bit too loud when you play it out of a laptop, out of a phone. If you bring it up from floor level, you often decide that that sounds good enough before the point it gets too loud. So let's just have a listen. Cool, so that's sounding great. The first thing that I'm gonna do is I'm gonna throw EQ 8 on this, and I'm gonna round off some of those low notes. Select notch number 2 here, and just take out some of those muddy frequencies. We're going to go back to our sub bass, and we're just going to round this off slightly. There won't be really anything in the higher register, but we're just going to sweep that off as well. Cool, and I basically take it to the slope that occurs here, and we can get rid of all of these higher harmonics to leave some space in our track. Finally, I'm going to go back to that Serum sound that I have and add an EQ here, just to get rid of any sub bass that's occurring. And we're looking pretty good. Cool. So these three together. So what we can do is we can group the basses that we have here. You can put an amp designer on this if you don't have something like Waves R bass, and this is going to pull that bass out of smaller speakers and just make it sound a little bit tighter. If you do use an amp designer, if you're using Ableton, you can set it to something like clean or blues and just bring up some of the saturation in the higher harmonics. So we're going to go through some of these presets and just see how it sounds. And the last thing that I'm going to do to this organ bass is set Ha's to it, so it's super, super wide. I'm going to put utility on my main sub bass, so it sits completely central. So this is what it all sounds like together. Great stuff. When we come back, we're going to look at creating a quick basic melody, and we're going to look at the classic UK garage vocal chops. As I've said before, if you're part of my Patreon, you can join that and you'll get the entire project, including melody, drums, bass line, and this Nintendo Pluck sound all together to do what you like with. So that was creating a bassline and melody section for a UK garage track. I've kept it kind of lo-fi and low pass for now because this is going to work really well when working with an artist. But don't worry, in next week's video, what we're going to do is start introducing some more high-end melodies and vocal chops. If you enjoyed the video, please do like and subscribe and leave a comment. What do you want to see in future? For now, guys, take care and I'll see you next time.